I would like to discuss about Sri Lankan situation, and based on your statement about the rule of law situation and also about Muslim cremations, but I would also like to discuss a bit more in detail about the rule of law situation in Sri Lanka.
The International Bar Association's Human Rights Institute has, over the years, watched, and sometimes with very real dismay, events within the justice ecology of Sri Lanka, because this is a country with great people, good people, who, like every people in the world, want to have freedom and liberty and to live without conflict. And you need good institutions for that. And it saddens me when I hear accounts of failures to give access to lawyers for those who are in prison. When people have been arrested, putting them through the business of, if their lawyer is allowed to see them, that there are other people in the room from the security services or from the police listening into their conversations. That's not due process. That is not acting in accordance with the rule of law. And we're seeing this happening too often, where people being accused of being involved in offences or in the periphery of offences relating to terrorism. And the label terrorism can be used too freely to round up people who are really your political opponents. There's a detective in prison, I know, in Sri Lanka, who was investigating corruption at a high level. And it's always alarming to anyone on the outside to hear that someone who is doing that suddenly finds themselves in custody and being accused of crime. I'm afraid that authoritarians do this the world over, and I would like to be persuaded that Sri Lanka is not following a pattern of actually incarcerating people because they don't like them, they don't like their opposition, rather than because they really are people who've committed crime. Due process matters as much when you're dealing with people who are the opponents of the state as with anyone. You have to have fair, proper, just processes, and people have to have their human rights respected when they're in custody and so on. And I am concerned that that is not happening currently in Sri Lanka, and that the rule of law is not being adhered to in the ways that we would want to see.
And the International Bar Association has also expressed concern about the forced cremation of Muslim COVID-19 fatalities.
The International Bar Association's Human Rights Institute has also expressed concern about the Sri Lankan authorities not permitting Muslim burial after people have died of COVID. And burial is very much part of the Islamic tradition, and part of religious freedom is to be able to practice your religion in accordance with your own customs and with the norms within your religion. And the failure to allow cremation has caused real pain to people who've lost members of their family and their loved ones, and that they don't have a place where they can go and basically pay their respects to those who went before them. So I think that that has been an erosion of religious freedom. And the argument that's been given is that that's because COVID can contaminate the earth even after people have died, and that it will seep down into the aquifer, into the water table, and therefore it will pass to other people. And I have looked at the World Health Organization's position on all of this based on good science, and I don't accept the claim that's being made that there are good scientific reasons for refusing people their religious rights. And so I see this as being yet another way in which the freedoms of people are being interfered with. And I think it is a source of regret. And I would like to see the Sri Lankan government taking advice more widely than it has done, and to listen to what the World Health Organization is saying.
Baroness Kennedy, just one last question, because this is in a wider perspective. A few days ago, a parliamentarian was imprisoned for 4 years by Sri Lanka judiciary for contempt of charge. I'm not asking you to comment on that particular issue, but what is your view about contempt of court, and how people should be punished for contempt of court?
It's always very difficult to comment on the actions of judges in other jurisdictions about particular cases, even if it's on a particular issue like contempt of court. Contempt of court matters. Courts have to be respected, and the rules of courts and the rules of the system have to be respected, and judges have to have the powers, as they do in the United Kingdom and elsewhere, to deal with people who act in contempt of the justice system. But it would be rare to imprison people for years for a contempt of court. Good management of courts shouldn't require that. And I would be concerned about lengthy prison sentences being used in this sort of situation. But one of the things that is vitally important in the rule of law is to have independent judges who are not captured by governments or by the state, who know that at times that they have to resist the pressures that they will come under from governments. An independent judiciary is a vital component to the rule of law, and it's a burden on those who play these roles, who are the judges. I would call upon Sri Lanka's judges to think twice about using contempt of court too readily, and not to appreciate that when people are going through processes, they can be very difficult, and to imprison people too readily is not the answer.
Baroness Kennedy, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.